Hello, good morning and welcome back to the fish locker out on the shore. We are up at the Bristol Channel today. This is Burnham on Sea behind me there. I've never fished in this area before, so what I've done today is I've enlisted the help of a local guide and my friend Jansen Teakle. I'm going to be picking his brain a lot today, so you're going to hear a lot from him. I just thought I'd show you the area where we are before we start. The sun's just come up at back of us. My favourite time of day. Let's get going. We're just making our way down to the low tide line here to go and do a bit of fishing. And I think that I've reached the point where I don't want to go any further. And I'm having to be rescued. There's Jansen there. He's literally just like stepping off a cliff. Hard ground, hound ground, to my knee. Can I have some help, please? Yeah, so we were just talking and we were just busy minding our own business, talking about fishing, and walked down and I've literally just, that's it. The area where I'm standing now, look, is relatively hard. And then walk straight, only maybe 2 more metres, and that would have gone up to my knee if I didn't stop myself. You were just saying that you had someone down here the other day, didn't you?
Yeah, took someone down here earlier on this year. They went into the mud and they panicked, and that's the absolute worst thing you can do. If you get stuck in the mud, do not panic, first rule.
As soon as you start panicking and you start going like this, is when your feet start sinking more. Yeah, so I think we'll set up there. Before we get fishing, I am going to have to address the elephant in the room, and that is that we are walking over potentially deep and sticky, sloppy mud. Now, all I had done there is I had picked a little bit of a track because I knew that I was walking on sand. It was my own fault, I wasn't paying attention. I'd walked down one of these areas of sand where it was quite solid, and then as soon as I'd stepped off, I stepped into a bit of sloppy mud. Now, you were just saying that because of the settled weather that we've had an awful lot of silt settle out, haven't you, which has caused these little patches.
Yeah, I mean, this landscape here changes all the time, it really does. And at the moment, because it's been so settled, the sediment drops out. The water's actually relatively clear at the moment. I mean, you're not going to see shoals of sand eels going around, but yeah, you take a look in a minute, you'll see what I mean.
The tide's running in quite quick, so we're going to get some baits in the water. We'll talk to you about all that. One of the other things that we talked about on the way down here is, usually if you'll see me fishing out on the shore, I'll be wearing a life jacket. But you'll come to a point in time where I'm out with an experienced guide on a flat area. There's people walking about all the way up there and we're in good phone signal. Yeah, I'll wear it when I need to wear it, and I don't feel like it really calls for it at this moment in time. I don't do an awful lot of shore videos because I don't like getting sand everywhere. There's only one thing that I hate more than getting sand everywhere, and that's getting mud everywhere. So I thought I'd come to the Bristol Channel. This is how quickly the tide runs in. So you can see all we're doing is running the gear back in stages. I've already run my tackle boxes back there, and I'll come down now, and all I'm going to do is I'll put this one on the ratchet. I'm going to back this one's drag off so that you can walk the baits out. Now, I haven't been casting too far, we've only been casting 40, 50, 60 yards. One reason, because there's a big tide pull running down from right to left. If you cast out too far, you've got a lot of tide against your lines, so your lines are going to run down. Also, a 40-yard cast in 10 minutes, when I've moved back 100 yards, is going to be a 140-yard cast, if that makes sense. On one rod here, with the fixed spool, we've got a pulley rig that's baited with lugworm. We'll show you all the rigs and we'll show you the baiting up when we've got further up the beach and we've got a little bit more time. But right now we're just trying to capitalise on a little bit of fishing. On the other rod, on the multiplier, we've got a squid bait out. Now, the rigs that we're using are just, they're meant to catch anything and everything. I've been talking to Jansen and he says flounders, bass, strap eels, thornback rays. There don't seem to be an awful lot of crabs in this area, but it just says you get an awful lot of prawns and shrimps for the baits. Whereas down in my area I would have to keep cycling them out every 10 minutes. Here we can leave them that little bit longer. But yeah, the water clarity, anybody who's used to my videos in Cornwall, the water clarity that we have here is, that's how clear it is. You have about half an inch of clarity. Okay, let's walk these rods back up. Also, you'll notice that I don't have the rods pointing straight out because we've got tide running down here. Left a bit of a belly in the line so that the rod tips can sit over, so if you get a bite you'll register it like that. Now there are some scrapes further up the way there from mullet, and I've been looking for little flounder marks, so there are fish around. Just what I was talking about, that there is a flounder mark. That's where a flounder's been sat when the tide's been up. It's just been sat into a little hollow of the mud. Yeah. I've given this quite a bit of thought. Guiding in other parts of the world, it's as normal as going to the tackle shop and buying some bait. Here in the UK, some people still feel there's a bit of a stigma about it. All I see it as being is that Jansen today is helping me cut down my learning curve. I could come and fish this mark by myself if I wanted to. Ooh. Did you hear that?
Yeah.
I could come and fish this mark by myself, and I could potentially, hopefully, catch a fish just from the information and knowledge that I already have. But I would have a learning curve. I would possibly learn where the gullies are, or I would learn that the tide runs in, or what baits work better, or what directs the tide. Jansen is an expert, so I would use his expertise to help cut down my learning curve. So all I did was I just approached today and I just said, just imagine that I know nothing. It's quite easy for him to do because I don't know an awful lot. As I was talking about earlier, we're using two very slightly different rigs. They're both pulley rigs, but they've got a different hook arrangement. I'm going to get Jansen to talk you through them now.
So yeah, two pulley rigs today, both a little bit different but consisting of the same basic makeup. So I've got an 80-pound mono running all the way through down to a Gemini splashdown solo clip. If we move further up the rig, as I say, really simple stuff this. Bead, swivel, bead, crimp. Now a lot of people like to put a swivel on there. It creates a bit more rotation perhaps, but it's not really necessary. If you look what happens when I've got that swivel, see how the trace line stands out away? It acts as a natural boom. So moving down the trace line, this is where it starts to get a little bit more interesting. So everyone's seen the conventional pulley rig, two hooks fished in tandem. Well, this hook here is a circle hook, and then further down,
there's a bite there.
And John's actually just had a bite. I think he's got a dash.
Yeah, I'll comment on that as well because I do mine slightly differently. But for a reason, I've already picked his brain about this. Anybody who watches the videos knows that I like to try and get a rod in the water first before we do anything else. We're trying to take a moment to, yeah, slackliner. Oh. Oh, yeah. This is where I'll sink up to my neck. Tell you what, I'll talk about this in a bit as well. We're fishing mono today, and it's been a long while since I've fished with mono, and I'd forgotten how stretchy it was. I'm used to fishing with braid, and there's absolutely no stretch. So I picked the rod up to strike into it, and it just bounced. I did talk about the tackle before we come up here, and Jansen was saying to use mono over braid. You got thorn back, Ray? Yeah. Being careful about picking these up. They have got, just talk to you real quickly about this. The thornback ray taken on the bottom hook. When picking these up, they have got a squishy part just either side of their eyes there. Be careful of these, because on these cheeks, come close to the tree, they have got a lot of nasty thorns. We'll let. There we go. The little male, you can tell it's a male by these claspers. Yeah, I'm very happy to get my first fish of the day. Brilliant. All on camera as well. Because we're moving about so much, Jansen's having to move. I'm sorry I keep doing this. You will hear me a few times in this video refer to him as Jansen. It's not, it's Jansen with a J. I'm sorry, Jansen. We're having to move back again. So this is why I'm using the mobile camera rather than on a tripod. And I would love to be able to show you a really elegant, like, ray release when I'm swimming away. But the water clarity is that poor that you're just going to have to take my word for it that he's going to swim away, because this is how deep the water is and you already can't see it, look. So see you later. Yeah, brilliant. First fish, that came on a squid. On one rod. In fact, I'm going to bring that in a second. We've been working that hard, moving stuff about and talking and filming. Usually what I would have is a pre-baited rig ready to cast straight out when I bring another one in. We'll move everything back again, like Jansen's doing now. We'll move them back maybe another 30-40 yards, because pretty soon I'm going to have to move them past this gully. We'll get onto some harder sand so I'm not slipping about all over the place. Be able to talk to you some more about the baiting up and the rigs. We've only got halfway through that, but yeah, there's another perfect little flounder patch. I'm quite enjoying this. It's looking for the flounder marks in the sand. I've noticed quite a few on the way back up. There's another one just here. So they look like quite nice sized. They look like quite nice sized flounders, and they only seem to be in this little sandy patch rather than the mud. So as we keep working our way back, and we're going to be casting into here, there's every chance that we might pick one of them up. This multiplier rod here is fished on the ratchet, so the drag's slack, but it's fishing like that. So if I get a bite, the reason I'm fishing like that is because I'm going to be going over and talking to Jansen. So like as with the thornback before, I heard the bite, I didn't see it, because as soon as it bit, it went and had an audible sound. That one there, I'm fishing just tight enough to hold line on the reel, but slack enough that if we pick up a really big fish while I'm over there, it doesn't pull the rod over in the mud. I've just brought in and checked the lugworm rig that I had out. Like I was saying earlier, that Jansen had said you don't get an awful lot of crabs here. I'm amazed. Our baits, how long have the first baits been out there for? Half an hour?
At least.
Right.
At least. Mm.
And it's still had half the lugworms on. Like down there in Cornwall where I've been fishing, there's that many crabs. After 10 minutes you'd have to bring it in and there'd be bare hooks. So yeah, that was an interesting thing to note. We will try and finish the rig demo now. You were talking about pulley rigs. Oh, I'll mention now that Jansen's made his out of one long piece and just crimped it in the middle, whereas I've made mine out of a rig body with a swivel and a clip so I can have interchangeable hook lengths. That's because I go through an awful lot of hook lengths down where I am for things like spider crabs, because they nip all the line up and you have to replace the line. Whereas you'd have to replace the whole rig, wouldn't you? Because
yes.
It's one piece.
Yeah.
That's why I have interchangeable hook lengths.
Yeah, well, before that fish rudely interrupted us, we got as far as the hooks, I reckon. So, like I say, this is where it gets a little bit interesting. This is a kind of a mixed species pulley rig, or pennel rig if you like, which is part of the pulley rig. At the top there, I've got a circle hook running along there to a 2.0 Aberdeen hook. The thinking behind this is when I bait this up with lugworm or ragworm, that hook there could catch you a flounder, a sole. The top hook, if a bass comes along, is going to take in that entire bait and hook up on the circle hook. Now, a lot of people probably look at that and say, you know, why use 80-pound line? Well, there's also the chance of a decent sized conger eel coming along. Just a couple of years ago we had one here over 30 pounds, so you know there's every possibility of a big eel. So you've got the security of that thicker line if an eel comes along, you've got a hook for a flounder, you've got a hook for a bass. It's kind of an all-in-one rig. It's not the perfect rig for any of those species, it is a compromise, but that's exactly what it is, a compromise.
I've this hook as well here, a decent sized flounder, you'll see the size of their mouths, they'll have no problem taking that in. I mean, we've seen some of these casts around here on the sand, they'd have no problem taking that.
We've had flounders here in the past on 4.0 pennel rigs in the middle of winter, loaded up with lugworm, and yeah, they'll certainly get it in their mouths.
I will ask you to talk about here, you fix, this is the pennel hook. Having this second hook up here, this is what they call when they say pennel. Now yes. I don't fix mine in place. I whip mine round so that I can move them up and down depending on how big my bait is. You fixed that in place there, haven't you?
I mean, this is just my preference. Again, the thinking behind this is that hook being snelled in place, it does offer immediate resistance. So when a fish comes along, the hook can't slide, it's going to get hooked up.
This is the exact rig, but with different size hooks that I use for live baits. I use like a size 1 and then like a 6.0. So I'll catch like a little pin whiting on there, and it's got an empty 6.0, so that if something comes and eats the little fish that's taking your little hook, it hooks up on that.
I know a lot of people use this rig on Chesil Beach in the winter when they're cod fishing, and it's great in theory. In practice, if you get a bit of a rattly bite and you're thinking you're leaving that pout and all that poor cod out there for a cod to come along,
for me it's usually a dogfish.
You're winding an hour later and there's a dogfish on there. Yeah, we've all been and done that. But yeah, for this today, to cover a few different bases, that's what I'm going for.
Brilliant. We might have to move back again, and then I'll get Jansen to show us baiting up, because he does his slightly different as well. When I bait mine up, I don't use a baiting needle. When you're using decent sized hooks and decent sized worms, I've always just been a little bit lazy and I've just threaded them on by hand. But I'll get Jansen to give you a demonstration of using a baiting needle. Yeah, tide runs in fast. Right, I've moved my rods and my gear back 30 yards, and I'm going to see how long it takes for the tide to be back up there. Yeah, moves fast. And like I was saying about finding tracks in the sand and the mud, just up here, I don't know if you can see. You see all like these, like little scrapes. That's mullet. That's thick-lipped mullet. Me and Jansen have just been chewing the fat there. You can see where the water is now, and it's racing in. That was 17 minutes, and it's gone 30 yards.
Right, okay, so John's got us some nice lugworm today. Really, really good looking worms, those. Now, you don't have to use a baiting needle. It's just something that I do, and I guess it comes from match fishing years ago, using very small hooks. Obviously today we've got size 2.0 hooks, which certainly in match fishing terms is a big hook.
That's...
And you could just thread the worms on there, but if you have a look, I mean, they're quite fair sized worms, so the baiting needle just makes things a little bit easier. Straight in through the face of the worm, or the nose, whatever you want to call it, and I just pinch the tail off. Now, John asked me about this earlier on, and I said to him, well, if you don't, they're going to come off when you cast anyway. Sure enough, his next cast.
Me thinking, nah, they can't. I thought, I'm going to leave all mine on. Yeah, as soon as I cast, there was just all these little tails flying off, and I thought, yeah, I've never noticed that before. See, this is why, like I was saying, even though I've amassed a little bit of fishing knowledge throughout my life, someone like Jansen, who's an expert, cuts down your learning curve. It's little things that I didn't even know I didn't know. It wasn't until I asked him that I was like, actually, that makes sense. Right.
So there we go, worm number 2. You can see I've got the needle
Sorry,
here.
your needle, you've just put that hook into the end of it.
So the hook just goes straight into the end of the needle, and you just slide that worm up and over. And there we've got a nice juicy bass, sole, flounder bait.
What could resist that, eh?
Absolutely.
The tide is running in now, and it's just come over this little bank here where all them mullet scrapes are. But also, looking into here, there's another flounder patch. So this little gully here, you'll have noticed that earlier on in the video, that gully, the tide's run up it. Oh, there's a little tiny flounder patch there. Yeah. Fish do run up gullies. So what I'm looking to do is, as I move further back, I'm going to start casting into this gully, because the fish will run in along the side, up this gully, and then up onto the beach up there. Yeah, fishing from like rock ground, are fishing to gullies for cod. Fish do. Not only do they run up a gully because it's slightly deeper water for them, but it's natural holding places for feed. If the tide's going to be washing any particles of food, they get deposited inside of a gully. What have we got here? The second type of rig that we're using is just a standard panel, isn't it, with a sliding top hook?
Yeah, basically.
And what do you say these are? These are 4-0s, are they?
They are 4-0s or 5-0s. This is possibly a Huss rig left over from the spring, but absolutely fine for ray fishing as well. So, first thing of note, big tag end on there. Now, if you're using worm baits, that's obviously no good, because your worm's just going to split as you slide it over the tag. But when you've got a fish bait,
you might not be able to see it because the camera might not show that detail, but there is like probably a 5 or 6 mil tag end sticking out at the side of the hook there.
So when you've got your fish bait though, it's something that the elastic can lock onto and just stop the bait sliding around a bit. So what I like to do with a whole squid like this, quite a small squid this one, is just nick it like that, and then run it up alongside the shank of the hook and the trace line, and then just whip it in place.
That's interesting to see as well. You mount your hook on the side, whereas I, like when I'm doing a mackerel fillet, is I'll thread it through. But your presentation here will be better because
this is it.
The shank of your hook isn't buried; it's on the surface.
Obviously, in terms of presentation, because we haven't got great water quality, or sorry, water clarity, I should say. You know, the fish aren't going to see this, but they're going to smell it. So what I've got to do is attach it to the hook in such a fashion that it's going to cast reasonably well. If I wanted to cast it a bit further, I want the bait to be aerodynamic.
I'm going to mention as well is that you can see he's giving that quite a good lashing of elastic.
Yeah.
You've seen what the quarterly wallet's like. They're not going to care about a little bit of elastic, are they?
No, this is it, exactly. There we go. And what you can do as well is just trim the tentacles off. And it might seem a bit fussy to a lot of people.
Pick your tails off your worms and trim your tentacles off your squids. It's how I know that I've had little fish pecking on me, because I come back with no tentacles on the end.
All I want to do, I mean that's certainly the case, but all I want to do is deliver this bait to the fish in one piece.
So you're thinking of aerodynamics with the tentacles wiggling around in it.
If I did want to cast it a bit further, as we've already said, you don't need to cast a massive distance, but if for whatever reason I did want to cast a little bit further, it just means that this one's going to potentially be a bit smaller, a bit more aerodynamic. There we go, so I've wrapped the line around the hook.
Yeah.
I'm just going to take up the slack there, like that, and there you go.
I tell you what, you've done that once or twice before, haven't you?
Yeah, I mean, it's not that, there certainly is neater bait presentations out there. Some friends of mine on the south coast, they make these absolutely perfect little baits. You want to put them in a frame and hang them on your wall.
Your fundamentals are there though, aren't you? Is that you've got your hook points proud.
Yes.
And your bait's tight on.
Yeah. This is key. So using a bait to suit your hook size, and it's not always about the fish that you're actually fishing for. It's about using a hook which matches your bait. So
that's a great point. Rather than you could have if you use one hose in a big bait, your hooks are going to be hidden, aren't you?
Yeah.
And the same way that if you're going to be using 6 hose with one worm, your hooks are too big for you.
Absolutely.
Match the hooks to the size of the bait.
Yeah, yeah, that's the key thing here. But now I've done that, all I'm going to do is lock it into the bait clip. And there's our pulley rig ready to cast.
Yeah, and just so in case people don't know, this little piece here, when it hits the water, it pushes up and releases the hook out of there. Sorry, I've just messed with your rig. I'll go back over here now. Yeah, we've been running up the beach that quick. I mean, we're all ready. I think we're about an hour away from high tide now. We've already come back maybe 250 yards. Yeah, I wouldn't have felt too comfortable being down there and amongst all that sloppy mud, not knowing how fast the tide runs, being by myself. Yeah, local knowledge is key with that. As with any type of fishing, you should know what the tide's doing. But with things like that, yeah, it's better having some local knowledge. I was just noting there about us being further up on the beach. You'll see that we're up on the sand now rather than away from the mud. You'll find that you'll get different species more now that we're further up onto the sand.
Yeah, definitely. So, you know, we started off earlier on the mud. Usually those first few hours of the flood tide are when you get the rays, you'll get the odd conger come through then. But as you push up onto the sand, you've got more scope for species such as bass, as sole. You also get the congers moving up over the sand. Quite surprisingly, you wouldn't expect to find conger somewhere like this.
Not over clean sand, no.
No. But what you get in the river is a lot of shrimp. That attracts small whiting, and so in turn that brings in the congers as well. But this is why we're using a few different baits today. We've got the lugworm there, that should target the bass, the sole, the flounders if they're around, and then we've got the fish baits out there as well for the rays and the conger.
I've been picking his brain an awful lot off camera while we've been busy for stuff. I've found it fascinating. I mean, I like to think that I've been fishing for a few years and I've got a little bit of experience, and yet by asking him, like I said before, there's things that I didn't even know I didn't know. Do you, with your guiding service, do you find that you get more anglers that are fresh into fishing, so you have to go proper grassroots? Yeah, or do you even do like, if I came to you and I said I wanted to target a specific species, would you do tailor-made?
Yeah, absolutely. The one thing I have learnt over the years is you cannot be complacent about anything though. You've got to come from a point where you think that people don't know anything at all. You've got to start from scratch, you know, things just like putting rods together, putting a reel on the rod, things like that.
If your foundations aren't right, you're building a house on top of it.
Exactly. But you soon figure it out. If you've got a competent angler with you, you find that out immediately. But I'd say...
Is that why you were getting me to tie knots at the start of the session?
Well, I was watching you cast with a multiplier just now and I sussed you.
Yes, I was just making comments to that. I was just saying that when I got down there and I got stuck into that mud, it made me think of, actually, I don't think I'd be too happy coming here completely on my own, just fresh off the bat. You'd need at least a little bit of local knowledge to be safe.
I think, like you were saying earlier, it's just a way of shortening or flattening that learning curve. You know, you could come down here and you could suss it out for yourself. It might take you a little bit of time to do that. You might come down one weekend and realise that the tide's actually too big and you can't hold bottom, and you've wasted a trip down here.
Well, especially if someone's coming down here with only a short window of time.
Yes.
Like if you're coming down on holiday and you want to start a fish somewhere, I would definitely advocate getting a guide, because it cuts down your learning curve and you can get straight into. You might know that one beach on one corner of it's fishing, whereas the other end isn't, and you'd only know that by being local, by being fishing.
Exactly that, John. Exactly that.
Yeah. Like I say, it is almost like a new concept with people in the UK. But when you think about it, I've spoken to some people before, and they say, why would you spend the money? Then when you think about it, if you've wasted 2 sessions, think about your fuel and your time and your bait. That, if you didn't catch anything, that's wasted money.
It soon adds up. Yeah. It really does.
The tide has started to ebb off now. I don't know how well you can see it, but this little line of the scum and the seaweed was the high tide point. So the tide is ebbing off now as fast as what it came in. Now, I was just talking to Jansen about this. I would have, because I'd never fished this mark before, I would have fished all of the flood and then all of the ebb, just because I wouldn't know which was best. So talking to you, you were saying that definitely that you find the flood's more productive than the ebb.
Yeah, the flood has always been more productive here. I don't really know what it is, because you'd think as the fish were coming into the river they'd also have to come back out, but no, the flood has always been the key time.
We've been talking, and we've come to the agreement that we've had the best of the fishing. If we were going to be catching any fish, we would have caught them already. So yeah, I've possibly saved myself like 5 hours worth of of blanking time and the baits that I would have used by enlisting Jansen's help there. That's what I was saying again about the local knowledge, the cutting down of the learning curve. We'll fish this out for a little bit more. If we find anything interesting, or if we catch anything, I'll put it in. If we don't, then I won't. I hope you found this interesting. I found it very interesting. It's definitely, like I say, there's some things there that I hadn't even considered. I'm very
Every day's a school day.
Every day's a school day. You'll be seeing Jansen again. Jansen, I'm sorry. I did put a bit in this earlier on. For some reason, I just can't say Jansen. I'm sorry, Jansen.
I'll get over it, mate. I'm sure.
Jansen has got a guiding service. I will link that into the description. He's also got a YouTube channel, which is if you just turn around for a second. Oh no, it's not. It's on your hoodie.
It's on the hoodie. Hoodie's taken off.
Right. Called The Gambling Angler. I will also tag that into the description of the video. We will be fishing together again. So we'll see you later. I'll make you up this bank now. This will be where you gallop straight up it.
Don't know about that.
Should be alright because you're carrying all the leads. I should be flying up there.